Alors, bonjour tout le monde. Dans notre programme, ce qui vient ensuite, c'est une conférence. Mais avant, je voudrais vous rendre compte des réponses que vous nous avez laissées sur les cartons qu'on vous a remis à l'entrée ce matin. On a donc ramassé ces cartons. Si jamais vous n'aviez pas inscrit votre réponse et que vous souhaitez toujours le faire, le panier est toujours sur la table d'inscription là-bas. Nous allons compiler ces réponses, mais juste pour vous donner un aperçu de ce qui est ressorti. Et je n'ai pas eu le temps de faire une analyse exhaustive, mais quand même, j'ai comme trois axes de réponse. Un premier est sectoriel. Alors, on retrouve la réforme du système de santé, la modernisation du système d'éducation dans un esprit d'accessibilité, notamment le vieillissement de la population comme étant des grands sujets, des grands objets qui vont requérir que nous soyons innovateurs sur le plan social. La gouvernance, la réforme de nos institutions démocratiques, les relations interculturelles, l'exclusion sociale, la petite enfance, les relations entre les nations autochtones et les autres Québécois. Tout ce qui tourne autour du financement des services publics, des initiatives sociales, les régions, le développement rural. Donc, une première catégorie plus sectorielle. Une deuxième catégorie de réponses, presque aussi nombreuses que ces réponses qui sont par secteur, touche beaucoup au lien social. Comment on aura besoin d'innovation sociale pour retrouver le sens de la communauté, du vivre ensemble, du voisinage, le lien entre l'humain et la nature. Donc, toute une série de propositions qui sont de cette nature-là. Et finalement, quelques propositions qui voient l'innovation sociale comme étant utile surtout à nous aider à comprendre et à faire face à la complexité du monde, à la complexité des problématiques, à tisser des liens entre les gens qui habituellement se parlent peu, monde des affaires, recherche, monde social, culturel, avoir une opinion publique éclairée, et ainsi de suite. Alors, on a comme trois regroupements, si on veut, de sujets sur lesquels vous pensez que l'innovation sociale sera nécessaire. Et j'ai lu sur aucun carton que l'innovation sociale ne sera pas nécessaire. On va même maintenant passer à notre prochain invité. On discute entre nous ici au Québec d'innovation sociale aujourd'hui. D'une certaine façon, nous célébrons en même temps la création sur une base autonome du Réseau québécois d'innovation sociale qui est déjà existant depuis plusieurs années au sein de l'UQ et grâce à une collaboration avec le ministère à l'époque du développement économique, de l'innovation et de l'exportation. Mais ce dont nous parlons aujourd'hui concerne toute l'humanité. On en a déjà discuté un peu ce matin avec Mme Pulford du Réseau SIX. Et nous avons pensé demander à un autre intervenant qui arrive d'Europe pour s'installer au Canada pour travailler en innovation sociale. Et donc de nous parler de l'innovation sociale comme enjeu mondial actuellement. Nous avons donc invité Joeri van den Steenhoven, qui est le tout nouveau directeur du Solutions Lab du centre de recherche Mars à Toronto. Le centre de recherche Mars à Toronto, c'est un grand centre de recherche privé, public, enfin, qui regroupe surtout des chercheurs et qui établit des relations, des dialogues avec la société sur quatre grandes questions. Les biotechnologies, les énergies vertes, les technologies de l'information et l'innovation sociale. Dans le cadre de Mars, il y a donc un secteur de l'innovation sociale. Et dans le cadre de ce secteur, on a décidé de créer un Solutions Lab, un laboratoire qui est voué à la recherche de solutions en innovation sociale. Les méthodologies qui seront empruntées ressemblent beaucoup à celles du LABISC que mon collègue André Fortin vous a présenté ce matin. Alors, M. van den Steenhoven, avant donc d'arriver au Canada, a été le cofondateur et le directeur de Knowledge Land, un important laboratoire d'innovation sociale aux Pays-Bas. Il a également travaillé comme directeur intérimaire de la Young Foundation au Royaume-Uni et comme consultant indépendant. Il est également membre de différents regroupements. Sa biographie est dans le programme. Je l'invite tout de suite à vous adresser la parole. Il prendra la parole en anglais. Je crois qu'il reste quelques appareils de traduction simultanée si vous n'en avez pas déjà et si vous en avez besoin. Alors, Monsieur Joeri van den Steenhoven.
Michel, bonjour à tous. Merci pour l'invitation d'être ici aujourd'hui. Je voudrais commencer par présenter mes excuses. Je suis néerlandais, pas canadien. Je suis arrivé en Canada il y a 2 semaines. Alors, je parle un peu du français, mais pas assez de donner cette représentation en français. Alors, avec votre compréhension, je continuerai en anglais. I hope that went all right. And also from me and probably also from Louise, thank you to both the translators who've been marvelously doing a great job the entire day already. I have some slides as well. I would like to talk to you, give some ideas, touch upon some of the topic of what is social innovation and what are some of the challenges ahead. Let's see. Yeah. But first, perhaps a short introduction. I started my own think tank, it was then called. Now we would probably call it a social innovation lab, but that word did not exist when we started in 1999 in Amsterdam. And like many good social innovation ideas, this idea started in a bar where I sat down with a friend who also studied political science like me at the University of Amsterdam. And we saw the world around us changing, but we didn't see that change reflected in public policy. And we thought, well, if public policy is not taking up these challenges, then we will. And we started this new organization, and we looked for partners in government, in NGOs, in academia, in private sector, to work together and to help the Dutch society to become smarter and to become a thriving society in the knowledge economy and in the knowledge society that we saw emerging. And I spent there 12 years building up the organization from really small to somewhat bigger, about 15 people when I left. And I was asked by Mars in Toronto, the building below, to set up a solutions lab. And the mission of the solutions lab is to help find solutions for wicked social challenges and to help improve the lives of Canadian citizens and communities. And like I said, I started 2 weeks ago, so I'm very much at the beginning, having to build up everything. But today I wanted to share some thoughts on social innovation and perhaps have a discussion on what it could mean. To go to this, the concept of social innovation is not new. People have been working on improving society not for decades, but for centuries. This is Benjamin Franklin, mostly known as one of the founding fathers of the United States, a diplomat, a statesman, but also a scientist and an inventor that had a particular opinion about knowledge and sharing knowledge, because everything that he invented, and he invented amongst others the lightning rod, he didn't protect with a patent, because he thought that everything that he developed and that he invented was based on knowledge from people living before him, and he wanted to share his knowledge in an open way. And because of that, in 1730, he also started a library, and that became the first public library in the US and later on the Library of Congress, because he wanted to have a place with books open to the public where everybody who wanted to have access to knowledge to actually be able to do so. And this is Florence Nightingale, mostly known, of course, because she went to the Crimean War and there as a nurse. But she was, in my opinion, also a great social innovator. She started nursing school in 1860 in London. She inspired Henri Dunant in 1863 to found the Red Cross. She helped all kinds of education reform later on in her life. So she was also a big social innovator. This is Michael Young, who served as a minister in the Labour government in the 50s under Clement Attlee. And he wrote a book in 1958 called The Rise of the Meritocracy. And what he saw coming, and I think he was spot on in his analysis, was a class divide between the higher educated and the lower educated. And writing a book about it was not enough. He was, by the way, the one who gave name to the Young Foundation. Now we're talking about Michael Young. And one of the things that he invented was the Open University. Because he wanted to actually battle that new class divide between, on the basis of education. So innovation and social innovation has been around for a long time already, but in recent years it has gained more traction as a field. And why? And I think there are several speakers today already touched upon this. We live in times that to many feel as a time of crisis. In the labor markets, particularly at the moment in Europe, there's a lot of tension and a lot of fear, a lot of sense of loss of power for people who do not feel that they can actually keep up in a world that is globalizing, that is innovating, where technology is disrupting entire industries and maybe even societies. We have a financial sector which is in crisis because they actually, we don't have the right mechanisms in place for a sector that uses all kinds of new technologies but forgot to put the right checks and balances in place. And of course we've got a climate problem and a climate crisis coming up. So in a way what you could say is that we have system failure. The public systems that we created over the last centuries do not longer serve us. And I actually quite liked the reasons for social innovations that Charles Leadbeater gave, that Louise told us about. But my idea is actually that the challenges that we face today have grown in complexity over time. That there are higher demands and lesser resources. And that our systems actually do not longer match with the complexity of the challenges. And therefore we need to redesign our public systems. And that's what social innovation is about. And in areas like health, in education, in work, in reforming the welfare state, energy and environment, all kinds of public systems that we have created over the last centuries. And it's not only a time of crisis, it's also a time of opportunity. We live in a time where we have the best educated population in world history. And I think especially in a country like Canada, which I believe has more than 50% of the people with a higher education degree, which is, I think, a big opportunity for us to actually make society better. We live in a time where we are better connected to each other. We can learn each other. We have the means to work, to collaborate, to share knowledge, and to help to achieve each other's goals. And combining those two, we are creating all kinds of new platforms where we collaborate with each other, from Wikipedia to the BlaBlaCar platform. So social innovation is also tapping into these new opportunities that arise around here. So again, I think Louise also said something about, and Camille, about what is social innovation. And in my opinion, social innovation is about new products, services, and models that meet existing demands and new demands better than the existing alternatives. It's innovation that is social both in ends and means. And I think that is a very specific characteristic of social innovation. And to me, social innovation is innovation that is not only good for society, but also enhances society capacity to act. And all these definitions were taken from a study done by the Young Foundation, by the way. There's a Canadian definition, or perhaps I should at this stage say maybe it's an Ontarian definition. There is also a Quebecois definition of social innovation. This comes from Francis Wesley, who's based at the Waterloo Institute for Social Innovation and Resilience, which is about social innovation being an initiative, a product, a process, or a program that challenges and over time changes the defining routines. And I think the important element in this definition, I think, is that social innovation is not about new solutions, but it's also about different behaviors and different routines. And I'll come back to that later. We'll have a roundtable on the ecosystem of social innovation after this talk, and I'm looking forward to it because I think it's a very good discussion to have. What is the best ecosystem we create? And if I look back to how the field of social innovation has developed over the past decade globally, what I've seen is that it started with individuals, often free agents, sometimes social entrepreneurs, activists on their own, who saw they wanted to tackle those challenges and they wanted to grasp the opportunities, and they started to operate in a new way, even before the term social innovation was really common. And from that, you could say there was a facilitating infrastructure growing, which was the hubs and the incubators, centers where those individuals actually came together. They started to work with each other in buildings. They started to look for each other. And they started to actually work together in networks or find each other in networks like the Social Innovation Exchange, even globally. And that led to the formation of new organizations. And for instance, Knowledge Land was one of the organizations, I think, is one example of that. You could say a next stage in this development of the field is that we don't have only individuals working on innovation and new organizations working on social innovation, but now also existing organizations, NGOs, foundations start to see the importance of social innovations and the chances that it's offered. And there I see the emergence of labs, where the Solutions Lab is an example of, and Labbies is an example of. And I think the labs are now emerging quickly in different countries all over the world, partly because the labs help those existing organizations how to apply methods and tools from the field of social innovation to them. Labs can help the free agents and the new organizations as well, of course, but they have, I think, also a particular function in helping the existing organizations. You see new ways of finance and social finance, and I think that John will come back to that later as well. And I see the rise of academies and schools where we learn about social innovation and how it works. And that together is a growing ecosystem which is growing over the years and probably will continue to grow over the next years. So some examples of social innovation, but we've heard many great examples already today. Really congratulations to the excellent work that you've been doing here already since a long time. Indeed, Michel, I think Quebec is a leader. I know after today. It's very interesting to hear. Just to give one example of one of our own projects in the Netherlands, it was called Digital Playgrounds. It started from the question of how can we make sure that our children have the right skills to, and especially ICT skills, in the late 90s, this was, to have a good position on the labor market. And what we saw, that what actually was a digital gap, and that children from poor income families and lower educated families were actually had a far less chance to gain those ICT skills. And we started to set up ICT centers in poor neighborhoods of the cities in the Netherlands. And using the spiral method that Julien also told about, we started with 5 and then 10, developed models, set up a network for the so-called digital playgrounds in the Netherlands. And in 3 to 4 years' time, we had over 400 centers all over the Netherlands. And they trained, in the course of 5 years, they trained about 800,000 people. So using knowledge as a scaling strategy, networking, bringing people together on a common challenge can be very effective. Another nice example that I think is also the rise of solar energy in Germany. You there also saw that it's going in stages, with first experiments with 1,000 people all over Germany, which is not a lot, experimenting with solar panels putting on their roof. And then they started with a program with 100,000 households doing exactly the same. And then they started to change the law and the economic system. And currently today, 55% of the solar energy production comes from Germany, globally. But it started in the beginning of the 90s with 1,000 people putting some panels on their roof and being in a network. When you talk about education reform, the studio schools in the UK are a nice example of providing a new way, much more practice-based education for vocational education, which started with a pilot with 1 school, then 3 schools. Last year, 13 new schools have been added as a studio school. So there also you see a sort of viral growth of innovations through these public systems, and gradually over the years, those systems are actually in the end radically changing. So this spiral has been researched in a report. Starts often with a prompt. There's a sense of urgency. We need to change. We need to find a different way to a particular challenge, and then how do we bring that into innovation really on a systemic level? And that goes via this spiral of first a proposal, an idea that somebody has for a new approach, a new solution that's being tested, prototyped somewhere in one place, maybe in a couple of more places. You learn, you adjust, you sometimes redesign that solution. And what works, we try to sustain it, and we try to scale that up, and that leads in the end to systemic change. That summary sounds pretty easy, but it mostly means years and years of hard work, of fighting, blood, sweat, and tears to make that happen. But I think that many of you will know that. This is maybe a bit more difficult model on how to support the movement of that spiral, based a bit on the design thinking process, where you first define the challenge at hand. What is it? How do you scope it? Building a sense of urgency for it. Then really dive into it and try to really understand what the problem is and design new solutions, which you then prototype and then scale. But at the same time that you're doing that, you're actually growing your community of change agents, and you build their capacity to change the system in a different way. And in a way, you could look at it like this. This is Everett Rogers' module of diffusions of innovation. Pretty basic. It starts with the 2.5% innovators, the people who love change. They always want innovation. You can wake them up. Those are the ones that do wake up every morning and say, yes, let's innovate today. That's not the most of the people. It's 2.5% of the population, not more. And that's already quite positive, I think. Then you have the early adapters, people who say, well, I don't wake up like that, but I like new things, and I'm please bring it to me, and if I can be part of, for instance, a prototype, I will do that, definitely, for sure. Then you have the early majority, the people who say, yes, well, if you give it to me in toolkits or a workbook, and then okay, I will try it, and then you have the late majority that says, well, look, if we are going to change, that's fine, but first show me the evidence that the new thing is actually better than the old one. And then finally, you have the laggards, and the laggards, well, they don't want to change. So they say, well, whatever, if the new thing is better, I'm keeping the old one. And basically, what social innovation as a process also is that you're constantly growing the circle of change. You start with this small group of innovators, and then when you start designing new solutions, or you start to prototype or pilot, or start to open a second set, it's often the early adapters, and you start to learn, you start to develop toolkits, transfer your knowledge to the early majority, and so it grows. And keeping on that movement. So social innovation is not only about solutions, but it's about people, and it's about people behaving differently in a system. And then finally, coming back to the role of networks, that social innovation often takes place across boundaries. And for instance, the boundaries between the public sector, the private sector, the third sector, and the household, but also academia, NGOs. And social innovation grows through people working together and learning together. It's a learning strategy. The challenges that we are working on are wicked. So most often, there are no clear-cut solutions. And we do not know the solution at the beginning if we start the process of social innovation. So we have to learn from each other constantly. And therefore, networks are really important. And then, to close off, perhaps also a warning, a nice quote by Niccolo Machiavelli. And I think a social innovator is, in a way, a Machiavellian. Because you want to arrive at systems change. But that's a difficult thing, and it's a fight. Because when you do it, when you introduce a new change, and there's not a shrink of evidence yet that the new thing is better than the old, you will meet resistance. And that's quite logical. And that is also, I think, what Louise, amongst others, told us this morning. It's so important once in a while to come together as social innovators and share that feeling. Because this is a normal working condition for a lot of us. Before perhaps having a discussion and some questions, there is a video made by the Social Innovation Generation here in Canada, which explains also a bit about what social innovation is and what it can mean. It's about 3 minutes, but I thought it would be nice to show you that one, and then we'll have some discussions. So. There are always technical problems. That this morning was already said. It's loading. When we tried it this morning, it worked. Really.
We live in systems, on a planet, in a country, in an environment both natural and man-made, in a region, city, town, neighborhood, family. We have created systems to help us, like government, justice, education, health, economy, transportation. Many have benefited from the systems we have created, but some have been left out, isolated and vulnerable. Poverty, homelessness, addictions, unemployment, discrimination. Our natural systems have been seriously damaged too. Endangered species, loss of biodiversity, ozone depletion. Our systems have created complex problems that require novel system solutions if we and our planet are to survive and thrive. Social innovation is the result of the intentional work of people trying to make positive change happen by addressing these complex problems at their roots. Social innovation is a process, product, or program that profoundly changes the way a given system operates, changing it in such a way that reduces the vulnerability of the people and the environment in that system. As a consequence of a positive social innovation, many elements within a system grow more resilient, improving their ability to deal with future challenges. In the past, Canada has met challenges with social innovations like the Registered Disability Savings Plan, enabling people living with a disability financial independence well into older age, and universal health care, ensuring free health care and coverage to all citizens. These innovations are so much part of Canadian culture that we barely recognize the incredible vision, thinking, and actions that made them real. But these innovations do not just happen. They can be as difficult to introduce as the challenges they are trying to solve. Fortunately, there are people and groups across the world who have committed themselves to developing and supporting social innovation. They are creating new partnerships with a growing array of public, private, and community sector individuals and organizations. To see true innovation, we need to work for change at all scales. We need change at the individual level, at the organizational or network scale, and even legal, political, cultural, or economic change. People are taking a closer look at the systems we live in, and they are working together to help society and our planet thrive.
Anyone questions? Yeah.
Alors, on a le temps pour un certain nombre de questions. Donc, s'il y a des gens dans la salle qui aimeraient poser des questions, André et Mélanie, à nouveau, se promènent avec des micros. Vous avez qu'à signaler votre intention de vous exprimer et ils se rendront vers vous. Alors, est-ce qu'il y a des questions ou des commentaires? Vous voulez peut-être échanger avec Joeri sur le contenu de sa présentation, la contester, prononcer contre, dire qu'il y a des choses, des erreurs, des problèmes. Ah, il y a quelqu'un.
And sorry for me looking a bit like an ice hockey reporter now. But.
Oui, Nadine Maltais du Réseau québécois de villes et villages en santé. J'aimerais savoir, je crois comprendre que les innovations sociales sont nécessairement positives et portées par des personnes animées par le bien commun. Est-ce que, comme il y a différentes idéologies qui cohabitent dans le monde, il y a des gens qui portent des innovations aussi, qui sont des tenants, par exemple, du libéralisme économique qui est en train de nous conduire à notre perte, à mon point de vue. Comment on les catalogue à ce moment-là, ces innovations-là, portées peut-être par des gens qui ont une idéologie qui est probablement différente de la plupart de celles portées entre nous ici? Comment on peut voir ça? Merci.
Très intéressante question.
Yeah. Thank you for that question, and it's a really important one. We shouldn't be naive in that sense. If we're involved in social innovation, in creating systems change, it is a political act. So ideology is involved. I think social innovation is that most people who are involved are indeed have the intention of contributing to the common good. But it is, and there are actually also examples that is being misused for political purposes. And I think that is something that you always need to be aware of. In which political context are we operating? Under which political conditions are we operating? And especially if you, for instance, deal with the government. You have to be very much aware of the political goals that might be at the other end of the table. And then sometimes it can also be dangerous. If you look at the discussion, for instance, on the big society in the UK, it has a very positive side in the sense that the government recognizes that they cannot come up with all solutions anymore, and that they actually have to let go of some of the powers and give community more powers and enhance society's capacity to act. But in part, that was also turned as marketing for a very big cutback program. And then social innovation can also become sort of scapegoat for cutbacks. And I think we should be aware of that danger. In that sense, social innovation is like the internet. You can do marvelous good things with it. You can do also pretty bad things with it if you want. And I think it's up on our we have to be moral and ethical about that. We have to have that discussion for sure. Are there clear answers on that? No, there isn't. Because with every challenge and with every particular political context where you are at that moment operating in, you have to look at this point, for sure. And don't be naive. That's definitely an advice that I would give you.
D'autres interventions? Profitez-en. Des interventions, des échanges, des questions? C'est parce que vous avez hâte qu'on passe au panel sur l'écosystème, c'est ça?
It's Friday afternoon also, huh?
Mais, it's true. Alors, ben écoutez, oui, madame? OK. Yeah, but by internet.
Yeah.
OK. Ben, dans ce cas-là, je vais vous demander de vous joindre à moi pour remercier notre conférencier, Joeri van den Steenhoven.